Have you ever felt that, despite ending a relationship, you remain tied to that person in an inexplicable way, as if an invisible thread constantly pulls you toward them, no matter how much time has passed or how hard you try to move on? This is neither a strange nor isolated phenomenon. According to Carl Jung, one of history's most profound and revolutionary psychologists, we're talking about a karmic bond, a deep connection that goes beyond the physical or rational. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you tried to forget that person, to erase them from your thoughts, from your life, only to find yourself dreaming about them again, or feeling that inexplicable emptiness in your chest when something reminds you of them? Jung had a fascinating explanation for this. It's not just a matter of emotional attachment, but a true unconscious connection that remains active until we learn the lesson that relationship came to teach us. In Jungian psychology, our most intense relationships aren't coincidental. They're mirrors of our unconscious, external manifestations of internal aspects that we need to recognize, integrate, or heal. When a relationship ends but the bond persists, it's because there's something deep we haven't yet processed, a part of ourselves that remains trapped in that connection. And until we release that energy, we'll continue experiencing that magnetic attraction toward our ex, even when we rationally know the relationship no longer serves us. Jung described this phenomenon through his concept of the shadow and projection. The shadow is that repository of aspects of ourselves that we've repressed, ignored, or denied. When we fall intensely in love, we're often projecting parts of our shadow onto the other person. We see them in others, not in ourselves. And when the relationship ends, these projections can remain unresolved, creating that karmic bond that seems impossible to break. But there's good news. Jung also offered us tools to free ourselves from these bonds. It's neither a simple nor quick process, but it's deeply transformative. And it begins with something essential, the conscious decision to choose yourself above that connection that no longer nourishes you. Choosing yourself doesn't simply mean deciding you want to be better or repeating positive affirmations in front of the mirror. It's a deep commitment to your process of individuation, as Jung called it. It's recognizing that your path to fullness requires detaching from connections that are no longer part of your personal evolution. The first step to breaking that karmic bond is facing the truth about the relationship. Not the idealized version you might still maintain, nor an exclusively negative vision where you only see the bad. Jung invited us to see the totality, to integrate both the light and darkness of our experiences. Ask yourself honestly, what really attracted me to this person? What parts of me felt alive or validated in that relationship? And what parts of me were ignored, repressed, or hurt? This process of self-reflection is painful. There's no way to avoid it. But as Jung said, there is no birth of consciousness without pain. Each time you face a truth about yourself that you had been avoiding, each time you recognize a projection and reclaim it as yours, you're taking a step toward freedom. You're beginning to dissolve that karmic bond that keeps you tied. Many people try to accelerate this process by immediately seeking another relationship, filling the void with new connections, distractions, or even substances. But Jung warned us about these shortcuts. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, if you don't process what you need to learn from that relationship, you'll simply repeat the pattern with another person, creating a new karmic bond equally or more intense than the previous one. True liberation requires time alone, time to connect with your deepest emotions, with those aspects of yourself that you had been projecting onto your ex. Jung spoke about the importance of shadow work, that process of recognizing and accepting the parts of ourselves we've denied, because curiously, it's in those parts where we often find our greatest gifts, our true strength. Think about those qualities you so admired in your ex: creativity, passion, the ability to be vulnerable. Jung would tell us that if those qualities didn't resonate with you at some level, you wouldn't have recognized them in the other. They are aspects of yourself that perhaps you haven't fully developed, but they're there, waiting to be integrated. Similarly, think about those aspects of your ex that deeply irritated you, that caused conflict. Jung taught us that what bothers us most in others is often a reflection of what we don't want to see in ourselves. Not always literally, but sometimes in more subtle and complex ways. Perhaps your ex's unpunctuality infuriated you because it touches a part of you that fears not being respected or valued. Or maybe their emotional coldness hurt you because it reflects your own fear of vulnerability. This process of recognition and integration is the key to breaking the karmic bond. Jung called it the confrontation with the unconscious, and considered it essential for personal development. As you reclaim the projections you had deposited in your ex, as you recognize and accept those aspects of yourself, the intensity of the bond begins to diminish. You no longer need that person to complete you because you've recovered those parts of yourself that you had externalized. But there's something else that Jung understood deeply: the symbolic power of rituals to mark important transitions. In many traditional cultures, there are specific rituals to mark the end of a relationship, to cut energetic ties. Although our modern society has lost many of these rituals, we can create them consciously. Perhaps you need to write a letter expressing everything you feel, not to send it, but as a symbolic act of liberation. Or maybe you need to get rid of objects that keep the connection alive, not out of spite, but as an act of respect toward your own healing process. Jung greatly valued these symbolic gestures, as he understood that our unconscious communicates and responds to the language of symbols. As you advance in this process, you'll begin to notice subtle but profound changes. Those recurring dreams about your ex will start to transform or appear less frequently. That feeling of emptiness when you think about that person will diminish. And most importantly, you'll start to feel a new sense of fullness that comes from within you, not from an external connection. Jung described this process as individuation, that path toward becoming complete and integrated beings. Breaking a karmic bond isn't just about letting go of a person. It's about reclaiming yourself, about recognizing your wholeness and your intrinsic value. It's about stopping the search outside for what can only be found within. But let's be clear, this is not a linear path. There will be days when you'll feel you've gone backward, when the connection will seem as strong as ever. Jung taught us that the unconscious doesn't operate according to our conscious timelines. It has its own rhythm, its own wisdom. In those moments of apparent regression, be gentle with yourself. Remember that each time you face those feelings, each time you allow yourself to process them instead of avoiding them, you're advancing on your path of healing. A powerful tool that Jung left us for this process is working with dreams. Our dreams are direct messages from our unconscious and often reveal truths about our emotional connections that our conscious mind isn't yet ready to recognize. If your ex appears in your dreams, don't see it as a sign that you should return to that relationship. Instead, ask yourself, what message is my unconscious sending me? What aspect of myself is this person representing in my dream? Jung also spoke to us about the concept of synchronicity, those seemingly casual but significant events that appear to send us messages. Perhaps you casually encounter something that reminds you of your ex, or you hear a song that was special to you both at a key moment. These aren't necessarily signs that you should be together, but invitations to reflect on what that relationship represented for you and what lesson you still need to integrate. As you advance in this process of liberation, it's also essential that you redefine your narrative about the relationship. Jung understood the power of the stories we tell ourselves. If you continue seeing yourself as a victim of that relationship, or if you idealize your ex as the one, you're keeping that karmic bond alive. Instead, try to see the relationship as an important chapter in your life, one that brought you both gifts and challenges, but that has already fulfilled its purpose. This change in perspective doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process that requires patience and self-compassion. Jung reminded us that it's not about being perfect, it's about being complete. And part of that completeness implies accepting that we have loved, we have lost, and we have grown through that experience. Another fundamental aspect of breaking a karmic bond is authentic forgiveness. Not that superficial forgiveness that says it's okay, it doesn't matter when it actually does matter. But that deep forgiveness that comes from understanding that we're all doing the best we can with the emotional tools we have at each moment. Jung understood that true forgiveness is one of the most liberating acts we can perform, not for the other, but for ourselves. This forgiveness extends also toward yourself, for the decisions you made, for the signals you may have ignored, for the times you didn't establish healthy boundaries. Jung taught us that being kind to oneself isn't indulgence, it's wisdom. It's recognizing our shared humanity and our imperfect but constantly evolving nature. As you work on breaking this karmic bond, you'll notice that you're not only freeing yourself from a specific connection with your ex, but you're transforming your way of relating in general. This is because, as Jung pointed out, our most significant relationships are always mirrors of our relationship with ourselves. By healing this connection, you're establishing the foundation for healthier and more authentic future relationships. This is perhaps one of the most profound gifts you get from doing this work, the ability to relate from fullness, not from lack. Jung spoke about how our romantic relationships often seek to complete something we feel we're missing. But when you've done the work of reclaiming your projections, of integrating your shadow, of recognizing your own wholeness, you no longer enter relationships looking for someone to complete you. Instead, you relate from a place of internal abundance, seeking to share, not to fill a void. And here's where many people are surprised. Often, it's precisely when you've done this inner work, when you've genuinely broken that karmic bond with your ex, that new romantic possibilities begin to appear in your life, not because you're desperately seeking them, but because you're now vibrating at a frequency of authenticity and fullness that naturally attracts relationships that reflect this new internal state. Jung explained it through his concept of attraction of complementary opposites. When you've integrated diverse aspects of your personality, when you've recognized both your light and your shadow, you naturally attract people who resonate with that integration, not with your wounds or deficiencies. But even if you're not looking for a new relationship right now, the work of breaking that karmic bond with your ex is invaluable. Because essentially, it's not just about freeing yourself from a specific person, but from relational patterns that no longer serve you, from limiting beliefs about love and about yourself, from ways of bonding that were born from wounds and not from fullness. Jung invited us to see each significant relationship as an opportunity for soul growth. Even those that have caused us deep pain have the potential to be our greatest teachers, if we're willing to look beyond the superficial pain and seek the wisdom that hides behind it. So I ask you, are you ready to do this deep work? Are you willing to look beyond the pain of the breakup, beyond the longing for what was, and seek the lesson that relationship came to teach you? Because there, in that brave willingness to face your truth, begins the true path to liberation. I won't lie to you. This path isn't easy. There will be days when you'll feel the bond is stronger than ever, when the temptation to return to that relationship or to desperately seek another to fill the void will be overwhelming. Jung understood these moments not as failures, but as opportunities for deeper inner work. In those moments, remember that the intensity of those feelings isn't a sign that you should act on them. It's simply an indication of how deeply that relationship touched vulnerable parts of your being, how significant that connection was for your development. Honor those feelings without letting them drag you. Observe them with curiosity, not with judgment. A practice that Jung greatly valued was active dialogue with the unconscious. In practical terms, this might mean keeping a journal where you honestly express your thoughts and feelings about your ex and the relationship, not to ruminate or reinforce the attachment, but to allow those emotions to come to light where they can be consciously processed. Another powerful tool is meditation, the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without completely identifying with them. Jung practiced forms of meditation that allowed him to access deeper levels of his psyche, and he greatly valued this practice as a path to psychological integration. it's also important that you surround yourself with people who support your healing process, not those who sabotage it. Jung understood the power of environment in our psychological development. If you're constantly with friends who encourage you to check your ex's social media profiles, or who trivialize your pain, or who pressure you to get over it before you're ready, it will be much harder to do this deep work. As you advance on this path, it's also essential that you recognize and celebrate your progress, however small it may seem. Perhaps today, you were able to pass by that cafe where you used to meet without your heart racing. Or maybe you were able to talk about the relationship without that knot in your throat. These are signs that the karmic bond is weakening, that you're reclaiming your personal power. Jung taught us that true transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of small changes that, over time, create a new internal reality. Each time you consciously choose to respond differently to an obsessive thought or an intense emotion related to your ex, you're creating new neural pathways. You're literally reconfiguring your brain and your heart. And here's a truth that might surprise you. According to Jung, breaking a karmic bond doesn't mean you won't feel anything for that person. In fact, when you've really done this work, you often find that you can remember the relationship with a kind of tranquil love, with gratitude for what it was, without that sharp pain or obsession you used to feel. It's not indifference. It's a more mature and conscious form of love that doesn't need possession or reciprocity to exist. This doesn't mean you should or will be friends with your ex. Each situation is unique, and in many cases, maintaining distance is the healthiest option. But it does mean that person will no longer have the power to emotionally destabilize you, to take you out of your center. You'll have recovered your emotional autonomy. Now, there are cases where a karmic bond is particularly intense and persistent. Jung recognized that some connections seem to transcend ordinary logic, touching something that could be called destiny or soul purpose. In these cases, the work can be more challenging and prolonged. But even the deepest connections can be transformed when we do the necessary inner work. It's also important to mention that, on the path of breaking a karmic bond, intense emotions may arise that perhaps you had never allowed yourself to fully feel: anger, deep sadness, even momentary hatred. Jung taught us not to fear these negative emotions. They are part of the full spectrum of human experience, and, when consciously processed, they have wisdom to offer us. Anger, for example, often shows us where our boundaries or values were violated. Sadness connects us with what we truly value and have lost. Even passing hatred can be a necessary phase to de-idealize someone whom we had placed on an impossible pedestal. The key is not to get trapped in these emotions, but to allow them, fully feel them, and then let them flow. As you advance in this process, you'll also notice changes in your relationship with love itself. You'll no longer see it as something that happens by accident, or that is completely out of your control. You'll begin to understand, as Jung taught, that the deepest and most lasting love isn't an external force that traps us, but an internal capacity that we develop as we become more conscious and complete. This doesn't mean that love loses its magic or mystery. On the contrary, it becomes even more fascinating when we begin to consciously participate in it, when we understand that we aren't simple victims of Cupid, but active co-creators of our loving experiences. Jung invited us to see love as one of life's great mysteries, a portal to self-knowledge and transcendence. Even relationships that have ended, especially those that have left a persistent karmic bond, are opportunities for this type of deep growth. So if you're struggling with a karmic bond that seems impossible to break, remember Jung's teachings. You're not trapped in this bond because there's something wrong with you, or because that person has some supernatural power over you. You're experiencing an invitation to growth, an opportunity to reclaim parts of yourself that you had projected or denied. The path won't be easy or quick, but each step you take toward understanding your inner truth, each time you consciously choose not to act on your impulses to contact your ex or obsess over the past, you're strengthening your muscle of self-determination. You're choosing your emotional freedom over the comfort of the familiar. And one day, Perhaps when you least expect it, you'll realize that you can think about that person without your entire being trembling. You'll be able to recognize the value that relationship had in your life without feeling that you need to relive it or repair it. You'll know that the karmic bond has transformed from a chain that bound you to a thread of learning in the great tapestry of your life. This is the gift that Jung offered us with his deep understanding of the human psyche, the possibility of transforming even our most painful wounds into doors toward greater consciousness and freedom. It's not a process we can accelerate or force, but it is one that, if we commit to it, inevitably leads us to a place of greater integrity and inner peace. So I ask you one last time, are you ready to choose yourself, to reclaim your personal power, to transform that karmic bond from a chain that binds you to a lesson that liberates you? Because in that decision, in that commitment to yourself, truly begins the journey toward your emotional freedom. If this message has resonated with you, if you've recognized in it aspects of your own experience with past relationships, I want you to know that you're not alone on this path. We've all experienced at some point the intensity of a connection that seems to transcend ordinary logic, that traps us in patterns that seem impossible to break. And that's why I invite you to share this video with someone who you believe could benefit from these words. Someone who may be struggling right now with a karmic bond that seems indestructible. Because sometimes all we need to take the first step toward our liberation is to know that others have walked this path before us and have found the light on the other side. Let me know in the comments how these teachings from Jung resonate with your own experience. What aspects of yourself have you discovered through your most intense relationships? What techniques have you found useful for releasing those connections that no longer serve you? Your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to this channel to become part of this community of people committed to their personal growth and to the search for a more authentic and full life. Hit the notification bell to receive alerts about new videos like this one, where we explore the depths of the human psyche and the tools we have to transform it. Remember that the work you do on yourself is never in vain. Each step you take toward your emotional freedom, each time you consciously choose to break a pattern that no longer serves you, you're not only liberating yourself, but you're contributing to collective healing. Because, as Jung deeply understood, we're all connected in the great tapestry of human consciousness. Thank you for being here, for your courage, and your willingness to look beyond the surface. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, remember that you have within you everything you need to transform even the deepest bonds into opportunities for your growth and freedom. The power has always been, and will always be, in your hands.